Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be looking into the life and experiences of Krzysztof Jackowski.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a fascinating one.
It is he is a Polish psychic, and he claims to have cracked hundreds of criminal cases using psychic abilities.
Yeah, and not just like vague pronouncements or anything.
Right.
He gets into specifics like crime scenes,
Yeah.
missing persons, even causes of death.
Yeah, and the material we're looking at today is excerpts from a YouTube interview with Jackowski himself. And people have known him and worked with him.
Yeah, so we're getting kind of straight from the source.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find this one pretty fascinating. I mean, it's got all the chills,
Yeah, all the chills.
and the emotional stories, and just some seriously wild anecdotes.
Yeah, so what we're going to try to do in this deep dive is kind of get inside Jakowski's world a little bit.
Right.
How did these abilities allegedly develop? What is the truth about his work with law enforcement? And what is the price that he's paid personally for, living with these visions that collide with reality?
Yeah, I mean, so starting at the beginning, I mean, he paints a picture of his early life in Poland as like, humble beginnings, like large family, modest means.
Yeah, very, very normal upbringing. You
Yeah.
wouldn't expect, this kind of story to emerge from that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But even as a child, it seems like he was drawn to the extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah. He had, even from childhood, these visions that later on seem to mirror real world events.
Right.
One example, he was playing a war game with himself as a kid and arranging stones on a lake shore, representing, armies and battlefields and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And later in life, he realized that the positions he was instinctively choosing matched up with actual global conflicts.
That's giving me goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's like he was tapping into something beyond his conscious awareness even back then.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
As a kid.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So.
Yeah, and there's an even more peculiar story from his childhood about these little people he describes seeing in his house.
Okay.
Like these figures interacting with them as though they were real.
Wow.
And later on in life, he questioned whether it was, purely his imagination or something more.
Right. So we've got this kid with a powerful imagination, a fascination with the unknown, and these early glimpses of something different. So how does that then evolve into him assisting with criminal investigations?
Yeah, well, this is where the source material becomes a little bit of a puzzle.
Okay.
He claims to have worked with Polish law enforcement for decades, helping to locate missing persons, pinpoint crime scenes.
Yeah.
And he says he's solved hundreds of cases.
Yeah.
But there's conflicting information on how much official recognition he's actually gotten.
Yeah. So the police have publicly denied using psychics in investigations, but Jackowski insists that they have collaborated with him unofficially on many cases.
Yeah, so it's this weird kind of dance between skepticism and then this kind of reluctant acknowledgement of his apparent successes.
Right, and this tension, I think, is something that you see over and over throughout his story. Like, he's always battling doubt, scrutiny, and even just like outright attacks from people who just totally dismiss his abilities. But at the same time, he also describes these like incredible emotional experiences that seem to validate his claims, even if hard evidence is kind of elusive.
Yeah, it's really hard to just totally dismiss his story when you hear him talk about it.
Right, and I think one case that really stood out to me is the story of the 3 missing girls and the car submerged in the Wisjak River.
Yeah, this case is really powerful, I think, because it shows both the compelling nature of his abilities, but also the difficult ethical tightrope that he walks. He describes being overwhelmed with this vision of the car, the girls trapped inside the exact spot where they went off the road.
Yeah.
And he even felt the icy water. The girls' terror.
Yeah.
Their desperation in those final moments.
That's a heartbreaking image.
It is.
To like feel that and to almost experience that firsthand.
Yeah, it's like he's not just giving dry facts and locations. There's this real emotional weight to his accounts.
Yeah.
That suggests that something much deeper is going on.
Okay, so how did the police respond in that case?
Well, again, it's kind of this push and pull. You know, they were initially very skeptical, but according to Jackowski, they followed his lead and they found the car exactly where he described it.
Wow.
He even says that the local mayor thanked him publicly.
Wow.
But then the official police statement maintains that they solved the case using traditional methods.
So another unofficial success veiled in secrecy and denial. Did he face backlash for being involved?
It seems like the backlash came maybe a little bit later as his public profile grew.
Okay.
There's this really unsettling anecdote about him being targeted by negative press coverage.
Oh, wow.
Ridiculed and branded as a fraud, and this led to a period of like really deep despair for him, even driving him to contemplate suicide.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it shows that behind this public persona, there's a real human being grappling with this burden of his alleged gift.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that, you know, when you're looking at these stories, that these are real people with real emotions and real experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is a good segue, I think, into talking about the personal toll that these abilities allegedly take on him.
Okay.
He says that each psychic experience, especially those involving, you know, violence or death, it leaves him drained.
Okay.
Physically and emotionally.
So it's like he's absorbing the energy of these events and...
It's like he takes it on himself.
Right. And carrying the weight of all that suffering and trauma.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And this kind of connects to his work on the Iwa Serafin case.
Yeah.
Which is maybe one of the most well-known and controversial...
Oh, definitely. It's the most well-documented.
Right. Yeah. And this is the case of the murdered student. The one that he claims to have solved.
Right.
Despite intense scrutiny and personal attacks.
Yeah, and it really reveals a lot about his personality and his unwavering belief in his abilities, even when everybody else is telling him he's crazy.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's dive into that a little bit. What are the details of that case?
Okay, so Jackowski received a letter from Iwa Serafin's mother begging him to help find her missing daughter. And he was given a photo of Iwa, and he immediately started having these visions of a red car.
Okay.
Two men, a struggle in a wooded area near a railway track.
Wow.
He even described the murder weapon, claiming it wasn't a knife. But something else found in the car's glove compartment.
Wow. Did he give the police like a specific location?
He did. He drew a map.
Wow.
Pinpointing an area near a village called Vilcano.
Okay.
And he said this location just came to him in a vision.
So the police searched the area?
They searched and they found nothing.
Oh, wow.
And then Jackowski was confronted by a journalist from a local newspaper who just, you know, completely ridiculed him, accused him of, you know, giving false hope to a grieving mother.
Right.
And fabricating the whole story.
Another blow to his credibility.
Big blow to his credibility, yeah.
What happened next?
Well, this is where things take a really interesting turn.
Okay.
Days later, a woman shows up at Jackowski's doorstep claiming to be a relative of Iwa Serafin.
Okay.
And she has this bag with some of Iwa's belongings.
Okay.
And she asked him to examine them, you know, hoping to find some clues.
Okay, now I'm getting chills.
Yeah.
What did he say?
Okay. Well, he describes, you know, this wave of emotions washing over him as he's holding these, you know, clothes and focusing his energy, and the visions return stronger than before, confirming, you know, all the details about the red car, the two men, the wooded area near the train tracks.
Well, he's basically vindicated.
Yeah. Yeah, he gives the woman a more detailed description of the crime scene. And shortly afterward, the police announced that they found Iwa's body in the exact location that he specified.
That's incredible.
It is.
But it also raises so many questions.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't they find her in the initial search?
Right.
Did the police ever acknowledge his contribution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And unfortunately, the answers are a little unclear.
Okay.
The source material doesn't really go into a ton of detail about the police investigation or their response.
Yeah.
But there is this sense that even though he was successful, his involvement was largely unacknowledged.
Right.
Maybe because of how controversial
this whole thing.
It's like he's operating in this parallel reality, right? Like he's having these intense experiences. He's providing this valuable information, but he's never receiving full recognition.
Exactly.
Or validation for what he's doing.
It's very strange.
Yeah. So we've explored his early life, his work with law enforcement, the emotional toll it takes. I mean, where do we go from here?
Well, Jackowski's story goes beyond, you know, just solving crimes.
Okay.
He has some fascinating beliefs about the afterlife.
Okay.
And the nature of reality and what happens to us when we die.
Right.
And this is where things get, really metaphysical and thought-provoking.
Okay, you've got me hooked.
Okay.
Let's dive into that. What does he have to say about life after death?
Well, he very firmly believes that consciousness continues after death.
Okay.
And that our thoughts and actions shape our experiences in the afterlife.
Okay.
He even describes this really interesting encounter with the spirit of Marek Remusko.
Who was a former editor of the magazine Nieznani Świat.
Okay.
And he was a staunch supporter of Jackowski's work.
So wait, he claims to have spoken with a deceased person?
Yeah, and he describes it as this really profound experience.
Wow.
That gave him this glimpse into the nature of the afterlife.
Okay.
According to Jackowski, Remusko, appeared to him offering words of comfort and encouragement and even warning him about future challenges.
So this encounter with Remusko's spirit foreshadowed real-world events.
That's what Jackowski believes.
Wow.
Yeah, he sees it as this evidence that, we are not simply these physical beings,
right,
but something more, and that our connections and interactions transcend the boundaries of life and death.
It's a fascinating concept. I mean,
it is.
That's something that you see in a lot of different spiritual and philosophical traditions.
Yeah.
What else does Jackowski say about the nature of the afterlife?
Well, he believes that heaven and hell are not physical places, but states of being.
Interesting.
That are shaped by our actions. And the accumulation of our experiences.
Throughout life.
Throughout life, yeah.
So if we spend our lives, focused on negativity causing harm to others.
Right.
Pursuing selfish desires, our afterlife is a reflection of that darkness.
That's how Jackowski sees it, yeah.
Wow.
He uses the example of like a Nazi guard.
Okay.
Who took sadistic pleasure in tormenting prisoners.
Yeah.
During the Holocaust.
Right.
And he argues that in the afterlife, that guard is confronted with the consequences of his actions.
That's a terrifying thought, but it also makes sense on a certain level.
Yeah. I mean, if our actions have consequences, that ripple outwards, why wouldn't those ripples continue even after we're gone?
Wow. Okay. So it's not about some external judgment or punishment,
right?
But rather like a self-created reality based on the choices we make.
Exactly.
And the energy that we cultivate throughout our lives.
That's at the core of his message.
So it puts the responsibility for our own happiness, both in this life and the next, squarely on our shoulders.
It does.
That's a lot to ponder.
It is, yeah.
Did he have any other encounters with Remusko's spirit? You mentioned there were 3 total.
Yeah, and the third one is especially interesting because it deals directly with the process of death.
Okay.
Jackowski describes finding himself hovering over Remusko's lifeless body, feeling that stillness, and that absence of life.
Right.
And he even claims that Remusko asked him, "Do you want to know what it feels like to die?"
Wow. Did he elaborate? What did it feel like?
He doesn't really describe a visual experience so much as a feeling.
Okay.
A sensation of Remusko's consciousness collapsing inward.
Wow.
Like a star imploding.
Okay.
And he interprets this as Remusko's spirit, not leaving the body.
Right.
But merging with it, becoming one with its essence.
It's almost like the reverse of the birth process.
Yeah.
Like a return to the source.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to put it. This encounter seems to have really affected Jackowski, leading him to kind of question our conventional understanding of life and death.
Yeah.
And he even suggests that maybe we're already existing in the afterlife, and our physical reality is just this tiny part of a much grander existence.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical idea.
It is. But I can see how his experiences might lead him to that conclusion.
Totally.
It's like he's peering through this crack in the wall, catching these glimpses of a reality that most of us can't even fathom.
Exactly. And it leads to a really interesting point that he makes about the power of our imaginations.
Okay.
He suggests that our ability to to create worlds and experiences in our minds might actually be a window into this larger reality.
So instead of dismissing imagination as mere fantasy, he's suggesting it could be a form of higher perception.
Yeah.
A way of tapping into dimensions beyond the physical.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it, the incredible things that we can conjure up in our minds.
Yeah.
Worlds, emotions, all without even leaving our skulls.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's more to consciousness than we currently understand.
push things.
What if our minds are capable of accessing realms and dimensions that science hasn't even begun to explore?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a possibility that Jackowski really embraces.
Yeah.
And he encourages people to cultivate their imaginations, to explore those inner worlds, suggesting that, these explorations might hold the key to deeper truths about reality itself.
And that resonates with so many spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
That emphasize inner work and meditation and the cultivation of higher consciousness.
Right.
So much to unpack here.
There is.
But we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We've covered his childhood visions, his controversial work with law enforcement, his beliefs about the afterlife, the importance of intention and energy.
Yeah, and remember, this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
He goes on to describe other encounters with spirits, including, another fascinating interaction with Marek Rymusko that he believes offers even deeper insights into the nature of reality.
Okay, so we're going to have to save that for the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, get there.
This is definitely one of those stories that, stays with you.
Yeah.
It's leaving me with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of what makes it so captivating.
I agree. It's a good reminder that, there's so much we don't understand about the world and our place in it, and Jackowski's experiences, whether you believe them or not. They challenge us to consider different perspectives and question our assumptions about what's possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us on this first part of our deep dive. And we'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it.
To continue this exploration of the world of Krzysztof Jackowski. So you mentioned that Jackowski had multiple encounters with Marek Rymusko's spirit. What else did he experience?
Yeah, these encounters really get into some fascinating territory with Jackowski's beliefs about the afterlife.
Okay.
In one vision, he describes seeing Rymusko standing in front of this massive white object shaped like a boomerang.
Okay.
And when Rymusko touched the inside of this object, it opened up to reveal hundreds of compartments.
Okay.
Each containing a scene or a memory from his life.
So like a cosmic highlight reel.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
All of his experiences, both good and bad.
Wow. So Jackowski interprets this as Rymusko having the ability to revisit these experiences.
That's right.
Like relive them.
Yeah, to relive them with the same intensity and emotions.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
It suggests that time, as we understand it, might not be linear in the afterlife.
It's a very different way of thinking about things.
Yeah, like past, present, future could all exist simultaneously.
Yeah, it's a very thought-provoking concept.
It is.
And Jackowski connects this idea to the concept of heaven and hell, suggesting that, our boomerangs are filled with the essence of our actions and intentions.
While we're alive.
While we're alive.
Right.
Yeah, so if we spend our lives focused on negativity, causing harm to others, pursuing selfish desires.
Our afterlife boomerang becomes a reflection of that darkness.
That's exactly how he sees it.
Wow.
He even uses this chilling example of a Nazi guard who took sadistic pleasure in, tormenting prisoners during the Holocaust.
Right.
And he argues that in the afterlife, this guard is confronted with the consequences of his actions.
Wow.
Reliving the pain and suffering that he inflicted.
It's a terrifying thought.
It is.
But it also makes a certain kind of karmic sense.
It does.
Right. If our actions have consequences that ripple outward, why wouldn't those ripples continue?
Why would they?
Even after we're gone. Wow. Okay. So Jackowski is saying it's not about some external judgment or punishment.
No.
But rather a self-created reality.
Right.
Based on the choices we make.
Right.
And the energy we cultivate throughout our lives.
That's the heart of it. Yeah.
It's pretty profound.
It is.
Did Jackowski have any other encounters with Rymusko's spirit?
Yeah, he did. You mentioned there were 3 total, right?
Right, and we've only talked about 2.
Right, and this third one is really interesting because it deals with the process of death itself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jackowski describes, finding himself hovering over Rymusko's lifeless body, feeling the stillness, the absence of life.
Right.
And he even says that Rymusko asked him, "Do you want to know what it feels like to die?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did he elaborate on that at all? What did it feel like?
He doesn't describe so much of visual experience, but more of a feeling, the sensation of Rymusko's consciousness collapsing inward.
Wow.
Almost like a star imploding.
Wow.
And he interprets this as Rymusko's spirit, not leaving the body, but merging with it, becoming one with its essence.
That's almost like the reverse of the birth process.
Yeah.
A return to the source.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
It is.
Yeah.
This encounter seems to have really affected Jackowski.
Yeah, it did.
Leading him to really question our conventional understanding of life and death.
Yeah, and even suggesting that, maybe we're already existing in the afterlife.
Right.
And this physical reality is just this tiny
Oh, yeah.
little sliver
Yeah.
of a much grander existence.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty radical concept.
It is.
But I can see how these experiences could lead him to that conclusion.
Absolutely.
It's like he's peering through this crack in the wall, catching these glimpses of a reality that most of us can't even fathom.
That most of us can't even begin to imagine.
Right, and it leads to this really interesting point that he makes about the power of our imagination.
Yeah.
He suggests that, our ability to imagine, to create worlds and experiences in our minds might actually be a window into this larger reality.
Yeah.
So instead of dismissing imagination as mere fantasy,
right,
he's suggesting it could be a form of higher perception.
Right.
A way of tapping into dimensions beyond the physical.
That's the idea.
Wow. So what if our minds are capable of accessing realms and dimensions that science hasn't even begun to explore?
I mean, it's a possibility, right?
Yeah, it is.
And it's one that Jackowski really embraces. He encourages people to cultivate their imaginations to explore those inner worlds.
Right.
Suggesting that these explorations might hold the key to deeper truths about reality itself.
And that resonates with a lot of different spiritual traditions.
It does.
That emphasize inner work and meditation and the cultivation of higher consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fascinating stuff.
It is.
We've covered his beliefs about the afterlife, encounters with spirits, thoughts on the power of imagination. But there's one more piece of Jackowski's story we need to explore.
Right.
His insights into the nature of energy, intention, and their impact on our lives and the world around us.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
How does he see that connection?
All right.
So we've been talking about Jackowski's claims about, interacting with spirits and glimpsing the afterlife. But how does he think those experiences relate to our lives, like right here, right now?
Well, Jackowski believes that everything is connected by this subtle web of energy.
Okay.
And he sees our thoughts and intentions as like transmitters, sending out signals that influence this web.
Okay.
He even suggests that our collective thoughts and emotions can shape events on a global scale.
So like a kind of collective consciousness that can actually influence the course of history.
Yeah, that's the idea. He uses the example of like major global events, like wars or natural disasters, and suggests that they're often preceded by this buildup of negative energy in the collective consciousness.
That's a fascinating thought.
It is.
And it's also kind of unsettling.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes you consider the power of our collective thoughts.
Right.
And the responsibility that each of us has in shaping the world.
So it's not just about grand gestures or world-changing events.
Right.
It's about those everyday choices.
It's about the little things.
Yeah, the energy that we bring to our interactions.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thoughts that we allow to take root in our minds.
He really emphasizes, being mindful of our thoughts, cultivating positive emotions.
Okay.
And focusing our intentions on creating good in the world.
And that aligns with, a lot of spiritual teachings and practices. And emphasize the transformative power of love and kindness.
Absolutely.
And cultivating that positive energy.
Yeah, and it's a message that feels particularly relevant right now,
Yeah.
in today's world where we're just bombarded with so much negativity and fear and division.
Right.
Jackowski's story reminds us that we can choose a different path.
We can...
That we can focus on creating a more positive and harmonious reality for ourselves and the people around us.
It's inspiring.
It is.
To think that we're not just passive observers in this grand cosmic play, but active participants who can shape our destinies and contribute to a more positive future.
Absolutely. And that brings us to, Jackowski's insights on living a meaningful life.
Okay.
And you might expect someone who claims to speak to spirits, to have this really grand esoteric philosophy.
Right.
But his advice is surprisingly practical.
Okay, what does he say?
He emphasizes, simple things like being present in the moment, appreciating the beauty around us, nurturing genuine connections with others.
So like a mindfulness practice.
Yeah, exactly. A way to kind of stay grounded even when you're encountering these extraordinary things.
Right.
And he also stresses the importance of trusting your intuition.
Okay.
That inner voice that guides you towards your true path,
right.
even if it seems illogical or unconventional.
And it's interesting how that theme of intuition keeps coming up
It does.
in his story.
Yeah.
Like he's consistently following those flashes of insight.
Yes.
Whether it's leading him to a crime scene or prompting him to send positive energy to someone who's being difficult.
It's a good reminder for all of us, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes the most profound truths and the most meaningful experiences lie beyond, pure logic.
Right.
We have to be open to the unknown.
Right.
And trust those gut feelings that can lead us to some pretty unexpected places.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Krzysztof Jackowski's life,
Right.
what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's not about, blindly accepting everything he says as fact,
Right.
but using his story as a springboard for your own exploration.
Okay.
Question your assumptions, be open to perspectives that might challenge your understanding of the world.
So less about believing and more about questioning.
Yeah.
Embracing the possibility that there might be more to reality than meets the eye. Is there a final thought, a question, something we haven't explicitly discussed that you think our listeners should ponder?
I think it goes back to, Jackowski's musings on the nature of reality.
Okay.
Remember, he wondered if our imagination could be a window into a larger reality.
Yeah.
If our perception of the physical world is just this tiny part of a much grander existence.
It's a fascinating concept to consider.
It is.
Maybe there's a lot more going on than we realize.
Maybe.
And our imaginations might hold the key to unlocking those hidden dimensions.
What do you think?
I think it's definitely something worth exploring.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Krzysztof Jackowski.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another adventure into the realm of the unexplained.